but we should be good to go now. Again, HotMEOWTH playing for Team Panda Global. His teammate Ray, like we just said.
And Cydonia with a Deathwing in his Druid deck. This might be something that HotMEOWTH wasn't anticipating at all. Instead, this could be Big Druid
It's just Big Druid, yeah. It has to be. You're never seeing Deathwing in a Jade Druid deck, so likely just a Big Druid list with dragons. Really interesting. I did not expect to see this. We're still getting that spectator figured out. So bear with us, guys. We're going to have that fixed very shortly.
What if it's just Jade Druid with Deathwing in it?
Do you think that really could ever be a thing?
It would be a very wacky tech, but I was expecting a little bit of whack in this tournament.
We haven't seen enough whack, you're right.
Yeah, it's been so zoned in. Maybe something from left field would do pretty well in this field as well.
It is definitely possible. Kind of the last place that I would expect it from, though, for Cydonia. I definitely would have expected some solid meta decks, and this is definitely an off-meta build for Druid. It's not a bad deck by any means. It's just unexpected.
Yeah, and I think we just saw a little glimpse of our TO buddy out there, confirming indeed that there is a Deathwing on the screen.
Yeah, not quite matching up with... The lists are not public at this point in time. They will be public for the top 4. But from what we can see, Cydonia...
Oh, I think we might have actually just had the...
Yeah, I wonder if this is just a test
there.
match.
Yeah, I think HotMEOWTH is the one bringing the Big Druid instead.
Okay, there you go.
Cydonia is one with the road.
All right, that makes a little bit more sense. HotMEOWTH, after all, brought Blood Warriors to Worlds.
Yeah, so
this makes sense.
The Deathwing may be a little less unexpected from HotMEOWTH here. Cydonia going to go ahead and make his Edwin this turn, understanding that he has plenty of time to utilize these Vilespine Slayers later on in the game here. Wow, and what a welcome top deck for HotMEOWTH here. Nourish right on turn 5 into Wild Growth allows him to ramp into the Lich King and potentially even an early Deathwing here.
Deathwing against Tempo Rogue actually could be incredibly, incredibly useful. Granted, HotMEOWTH would be living off the top of his deck, but reminiscent of the old ancestral Druid days.
Yeah, I mean, I think overall, I like that Cydonia is playing this hand so aggressively. He understands that as the mana goes up and the Big Druid can only do one thing at a time, it's maybe important just to put on as much pressure as possible here. And actually, the Big Druid has some anti-aggressive tools of its own. Oaken Summons pulling out the Ironwood Golem means that HotMEOWTH has maybe paid a little respect as well to the aggressive decks in his Big Druid build. Ironwood Golem, Oaken Summons maybe replacing something like Primordial Drake in previous matchups.
So this package, to me, makes a lot more sense in this deck than it does in Jade Druid. We're seeing Branching Paths, Oaken Summons, Ironwood Golem, and Jade Druid over Jade Spirits nowadays. Big Druid suffered more against aggressive decks than Jade Druid did. So by fleshing out the early game against aggro in this deck, I think you're just improving the win rate overall. So I actually really like this.
Yeah, and HotMEOWTH has made a huge setup here. Probably going to go ahead and slam the Deathwing here after seeing the first Vilespine Slayer come out. And boy, does Cydonia have an answer to it.
He also has one angry face, but I think that is, to be fair, just his normal face.
Yeah, I think he's just very focused at this point. HotMEOWTH will be a little angry himself, seeing the second Vilespine Slayer come out here.
That's unfortunate. Now Cydonia is sort of playing build your own Jade Druid, I guess. He's got that Jade Idol, he's picked up a Jade Behemoth.
I mean, the Behemoth body is pretty formidable on its own, but the fact that you've got Idol and some additional stuff, Cydonia is taking the complete tempo here and has the option to, you know, swing the board state even further in his favor with a few more Jades next turn.
Yep, he's got development after this. He's got resources. The Swashbuckler has given him playable cards, which the value of that cannot be overstated. And HotMEOWTH, though the density of his draws should be very good, he does have a couple of pickups here that could be considered whiffs, I suppose. But overwhelmingly, he's got a good amount of card draw left. Ultimate Infestations, Branching Paths, just big bodies in general.
Yeah, I imagine overall that the fact that the Deathwing has already been played, HotMEOWTH doesn't have a lot more, emergency buttons here. Like, Spreading Plague isn't going to do that much against the board state. And who knows, without Primordial Drake, a lot of the board state won't be that easily resolved for the Druid.
Yeah. Primordial Drake is one of the best anti-aggro cards in Big Druid, but I can definitely see if you're trying to get the edge over Control Warlock in the early game, for instance, or over Jade Druid, you're going to just want to cut down on those anti-aggro minions and instead go for 2 Deathwings plus Ysera or maybe Alexstrasza, for instance. Yeah, apologies for this, guys. We are at the mercy of technology, as always, but here we can at least still see the game going on. Of course, the spectator is flipped. Once again, Cydonia is playing the Rogue. HotMEOWTH is playing the Druid. We'll get that cleared up as soon as we possibly can.
Yeah, it looks like HotMEOWTH had picked up a Nourish the previous draw there, got into the Swipe, Earthen Scales, and Alexstrasza, so he has a decent setup the following turn, and able to gain a little bit more armor, but overall, still pretty hard for HotMEOWTH to stabilize here. He's maybe taken off too many turns with those dead draws earlier on.
Oh, the Bone Mare. That is big for Cydonia. This is a very formidable board state. Defensive Alexstrasza plus Earthen Scales is pretty solid, though.
Alex coming out, maybe enough with an additional Swipe or a Spreading Plague to stall out the turn, but again, Sidonia's board state so impactful here, and another Bone Mare off the top to close out the turn.
22 damage for Cydonia?
Yeah, it looks very unrecoverable here. If HotMEOWTH had maybe had a second Deathwing in the deck, there's a chance. But, with Emergency Trigger already pulled here, it's so difficult for the Druid to deal with these bigger minions now.
Piling all of the stats onto that Jade Behemoth. Is there anything that HotMEOWTH could possibly do? No.
Yeah,
He used Deathwing already.
Giving a bit of a nod here to Spreading Plague, deciding not to play the Prince Kaliseth as well.
That's smart. That is the only thing that could stall this out for HotMEOWTH a little bit longer. Does Malfurion do enough? No, it does not. Cydonia going to take game number 1. That was a very powerful mid-game.
A little better against the aggressive decks, and probably still good enough against Raza Priest with Earthen Scales and additional bit of armor gain here. I imagine the matchup for Big Druid has only become more favored throughout this expansion.
Yeah, I would imagine that's a large part of the reasoning behind bringing this Druid deck over Jade Druid. It is likely just more favored against Raza Priest. But then you look at Jade Druid with double Branching Paths, with Malfurion the Pestilent, and sometimes they just armor up so far out of range that the Priest can't touch them anyway. So, I don't know. It's an interesting choice for sure. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a strategy that HotMEOWTH is revolving around because he's not bringing aggressive decks here. He's looking to target aggro and still have a decent chance to beat Priest, which means he believes to some degree that his mage deck has a shot against Priest. And it's a matchup that we've seen that maybe doesn't quite go very well for the mage overall.
It didn't go well when we saw it initially, but I can see a scenario where Arcane Artificer does a lot of work, where Frostlich Jaina can pull a lot of weight. Maybe Dragoncaller Alana if he's running her. I don't know. It's not something that I have all that much experience with, if I'm being perfectly honest.
The pan out just becomes the mage has to draw super well and the priest has to draw poorly.
Yeah.
You're looking for 2 good things to happen in order to win. At that point, a lot of decks can beat priest.
Yeah, that's true. If all of the combo pieces are in the bottom 4 of the deck, then a lot of decks can beat the priest. But HotMEOWTH off to a nice start with Ramp, going to be able to land that Oaken Summons pretty quickly, and we're going right into Ultimate Infestation on turn 10.
Yeah, typically we'd like to see like Shadow Visions being held until you know exactly what you want, but Cydonia has seen that this deck is the Big Druid list, so something like Shadow or Death is definitely sticking out as an immediate pickup for Cydonia. Instead, going for the Powered Shield, just trying to cycle a little bit. Maybe he believes that the Anduin is going to be enough of a stall against the big minions that he won't be needing the death so preemptively here.
As long as Anduin doesn't come down onto Deathwing Dragonlord, for instance, that could be one of the potentially huge swings for HotMEOWTH. Deathwing Dragonlord, Death Rattle into Ysera, for instance, which is notoriously difficult for Priest to get rid of.
Yeah, and the nice thing about Curious Glimroot is that it only picks up class cards. So especially in a big Druid list, there are less class cards involved, more neutral big minions, which means you have a higher chance of finding something like the Nourish or the Jade Blossom here, Cydonia has fortunately picked up in this matchup.
Hey, Ramp's good for Druid. Turns out it's pretty good for Priest, too. The faster you can get to Shadow Reaper Anduin, the faster you can...
Yeah, finally the game has become a little more fair. Let's just give some ramp to the other classes as well. See how Priest would do with an extra Jade Blossom here and there. Not bad.
We're going to cheat out all these big minions. We gotta let Priest cheat out a way to kill them. It's only fair. Because Raza Priest wasn't strong enough. But even still, Cydonia is going to be going into 6 mana next turn. HotMEOWTH going to 8. Jade Blossom is going to get him right to 10 for that Ultimate Infestation turn. And then it's just, hopefully for HotMEOWTH, going to be big minion after big minion.
Yeah, and with the hand being kind of dead here, I don't really think it's the Malfurion turn for HotMEOWTH. He's going to want to ramp this turn, get up to that 10, go Infestation, and then just drop Deathwing Dragonlord, and hopefully that's big enough a threat that pulls out even more from the hand if Cydonia manages to deal with it. And an Alexstrasza in Cydonia's deck as well.
Really?
Well, that's actually a card that's fairly good against Jade Druid, because one of Jade Druid's fighting points here against Raza Priest is that they take a lot of the defensive stance. So Alexstrasza oftentimes, although it doesn't deal with the armor, it can actually deal about 15 additional burn damage post Anduin.
Still
and that
can be
is a
good
lot
enough.
to consider.
Neutralize 1 full armor branching pads. Plus, it is just a big dragon that sticks in the hand to activate all of your other dragons.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that Druid is in general pretty weak to, is dealing with these big minions. Anything short of Naturalize is just not going to deal with Alexstrasza very easily.
Well, Ultimate Infestation is good, but if you can slam a Yasharaj on turn 10, that's probably just a little bit better. Unfortunately, it pulls out a rather underwhelming minion.
Yeah, Cydonia here might have to snap play the Anduin. The Yasharj is putting on a lot of pressure, and we did see last game that HotMEOWTH does have Alexstrasza in his Druid deck as well, so you have to respect any damage that comes close to 15, because once the Alex comes down, that can be a very swift defeat.
Yeah, I'm absolutely snap playing Shadow Reaper Anduin. The value that comes out of Yasharaj is too high. And the potential that it pulls minions that Anduin can't kill, well, that could be really detrimental.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't know exactly what HotMEOWTH is playing in his big druid list, but there's potential that it's not as greedy as, you know, Jade Druid or big druids of the past used to be.
Yeah.
Running things like Ysera on top of some other late game cards like Medivh, probably not enough room to do all of that anymore, considering the fact that he's running these Oaken Summons and these 3/6 taunts as well.
With the Alexstrasza, I would hedge my bets that there is likely not a Ysera in the deck, but it's possible. I mean, HotMEOWTH could be going just full dragons. We'll have to see.
Definitely curious here. The UI will show us a few more cards, and there's an Arthas in there as well. Just another target for the Oaken Summons to pull out.
That's sick. Oh my gosh, that is too cool. I love it.
I mean, Arthas is actually a pretty impactful card in all these control matchups as well.
It's great.
All the Lich King cards can be quite impactful. Something like Frostmourne is an extra 15 damage. Even Death Grip pulling out something for Cydonia. Maybe taking away his Raza could be pretty big in this game.
I mean, that's game winning. Absolutely. Even just getting something like a Death Coil for 5 damage can be good enough. A Death Coil for 5 damage can be good enough in a lot of scenarios.
Surprise burst damage as well.
Exactly.
Pretty impactful.
Yeah, so now you've got Lich King, you've also got Arthas to pull with that Oaken Summons. Too fun. I love where HotMEOWTH is going with this list.
Yeah, and Cydonia knows that the majority of HotMEOWTH's cards are going to be dragons, so is he really going to find a better Dragonfire potion than this right now?
Probably not. Cydonia really just looking for that Raza. He isn't going to be able to get a one-turn kill with Velen, but he can start chipping away at the armor for HotMEOWTH.
And HotMEOWTH deciding what to play alongside this Kun here. Deciding maybe that the Malfurion is going to be good enough. The Deathwing Dragon Lord also looks pretty appealing, but maybe he's trying to play around something like Psychic Scream a little bit here, try not to commit too many resources onto the board.
That's a good point. If you get multiple large minions on the board, suddenly they're bounced back to your deck. And the Deathwing Dragon Lord coming down, if Cydonia has Shadow or Death, could bring out the Alexstrasza when maybe HotMEOWTH wants to use that.
Yeah, HotMEOWTH with plenty of time left to gain armor here. Probably doesn't need to use the Earthen Scales just yet. Could save it, be a little bit greedier, hold on to it for the Deathwing Dragon Lord for some additional armor gain here. Deciding instead to get rid of the Blood Mage Thanos instead of armoring up here.
Interesting.
Probably doesn't want to draw that in case of something like Psychic Scream is maybe the consideration here.
That's a good point. We did see Dragonfire Potion already, so that's not a reason to kill the Blood Mage Thanos. I suppose it's a might as well type thing.
Yeah, Cydonia here, the game plan isn't quite panned out for him yet. Doesn't know exactly if this Alex is going to be used for defense or for offensive purposes. Instead, I think this is just a turn for Cydonia to draw a few cards and see where this hand kind of leads him at this point.
He's only gotten through about half of his deck, hasn't found a lot of cycle mechanic. There's a lot of dragons still missing from this equation. A Draconid Operative in the list, probably a Cobalt Scalebane. So still some very strong pickups for Cydonia.
Yeah, and Cydonia bringing this dragon variant of Razakis Priest probably is a nod to something like Jade Druid. Hopefully the dragon bodies do a lot of impact in that matchup. But overall, HotMEOWTH has gone even bigger than that. And Big Druid here is more of a threat than, an Alex can really deal with here.
I think this also just gives you maybe a little bit of an edge against traditional Razakis Priests. You do have a stronger mid-game with the dragons. You have a little bit of game with that Alexstrasza at the end. I don't know. Just seems like a decent choice.
Yeah, and actually HotMEOWTH able to fit in the Ysera as well. It seems like even despite the Oaken Summons list, he's actually managed to put on a lot of value cards in this deck as well.
Yeah, I'd like to take a closer look at this and see where he found the room. Playing 35 cards or something?
And Cydonia now forced to Psychic Scream, a board that honestly is just going to come back and bite him a little bit if he doesn't get the Raza on time here. Alex still very strong, and Kun obviously very strong, and Twilight Drake still a pretty big bane to the Priest.
Cydonia Psychic Screams this. HotMEOWTH can just 360 Windmill Slam that Ysera onto the board, and Cydonia now has no way to deal with it, except for potentially the Kazakus Potion.
I'd like to see this Arthas come down at some point. I'm not sure it's really a card that you want from Oaken Summons to pull, and even then, if it's in the hand, when do you really have time to play it? It feels like such an awkward card in this build, but maybe HotMEOWTH just wanted to have some more targets with Oaken Summons overall.
It's possible. You've got the 2 Ironwood Golems. Maybe there's scenarios where you draw both and then you get nothing off of Oaken Summons. I'm assuming he tested this list quite significantly.
Yeah, here Cydonia needs kind of a miracle draw with Lyra here. We're looking for Silence. We're looking for Shadow or Death. Anything to kind of go along with that. There's a Death. Maybe there's a chance that there aren't any dragons pulled out of this.
We could have gone for a 5-mana Kazakus Potion here to try to hit Polymorph a random enemy minion.
Absolutely.
I think I would have been doing that.
Silence from the Death.
Oh.
Not exactly the right sequencing there, and Cydonia again has to kind of cycle through the Silence and try and find some healing here. Otherwise, he's just dead on board to the Hero Power and the Ysera on board.
A couple of Binding Heals, easy.
Keeping him in it, yeah. Yeah, an unfortunate sequence for Cydonia. The Death getting the Silence instead reminds me a little bit of Rogue. You always Phantom Knives and then you draw the backstab.
Yeah, not such fond memories, but in particular, who has that big Spell Priest and has been having a pretty decent run with that, because it's a completely different deck than Raza Priest. And if your opponents are hoping to target Raza Priest, well, surprise, I've got another aggressive tempo deck. Beat this.
Yeah, I think something like Renegade's lineup kind of coming out from the left field is strong here because we've all kind of zoned in on the World's lineups. Raza Priest is the best, Control Warlock is the best, and at that point, you come in with something that's targeting that a little bit, or if you don't have what they're targeting in particular, you tend to come out ahead with some of the wackier builds there.
All right, so a Raza Priest for HotMEOWTH and a Jade Druid for Cydonia. This is a matchup seemingly as old as time itself, and it's very contentious. Historically, I think that Jade Druid is maybe favored by a couple of percentage points, and especially with the addition of branching paths for enormous amounts of armor, it can be very difficult for the Raza Priest to find the damage, but now that there's not as much Jade pressure in the Jade Druid deck overall, I think it's still pretty close.
Yeah, I think HotMEOWTH here deciding to hold on to the Northshire Cleric, maybe waiting for Cydonia to play out the first Jade or so before committing to the Cleric to get a draw off of it.
I think that's fine. Play around a Wrath. You need to maybe ensure a couple of draws off of that Northshire Cleric throughout this game, especially if you're going to keep up with the pace of draw from the Jade Druid.
Yeah, and traditionally this has been kind of where Jade Druid becomes favored. When they hit the double ramp here, it's very hard for the Priest to react to even larger and larger green men coming out. And Aya, obviously, the ideal card to be playing on top of all that ramp here.
Yeah. It's been a really solid start for Cydonia. He's going to potentially miss a couple of turns in here before he gets to that Ultimate Infestation, but once that is active, then he's going to have so many resources to work with from here on out. He's not going to miss any key turns, very likely.
Yeah, and HotMEOWTH knowing exactly where that silence needs to go. Only really one target for it to land on here, outside of something like Fandral as an emergency. Got to stop this card kind of.
Yeah. Prevent an immediate nourish or a ton of Jade Idol value.
Yeah, HotMEOWTH finally getting a draw for Cleric here. Unfortunately, it looks like Cleric is only going to be able to draw one card. But it is going to make Cydonia's turn kind of awkward here. He has to decide whether or not he wants to clear the Northshire Cleric this turn, which means he has to give up the Jade Behemoth in favor of a hero power.
Yeah.
And I actually don't mind that too much because you do get to develop the 5-mana 4/4 Arcane Tyrant behind that as well.
Still can't help but wish that this Arcane Tyrant was Jade Spirit. I don't think I've seen a specific scenario thus far where the Tyrant was so impactful that it needed to be in the deck. But then again, maybe we just haven't seen the best matchups.
Yeah, overall, I mean, anything that costs 0 in Hearthstone is pretty impactful.
Great.
And for Jade Druid, sometimes hand size becomes a bit of an issue as well. So on your UI turns or your Spreading Plague turns, you get to develop the free 4/4 behind all that stuff.
That's a good point.
Definitely has a decent impact against aggro as well as control. And HotMEOWTH here, understanding that he doesn't have quite the cards he needs in hand yet, wants to pick up the Shadow Word Pain there and go for an additional card draw for Cleric. Finally, the Cleric gets to see a little bit of additional value.
Yeah, this was really nice. It was HotMEOWTH showing this patience since turn 1, when he could have played the Cleric and instead elected not to, knowing that it's a little bit too weak to Wrath, to the Jaster Spellstone plus a hero power. Instead, he wanted to save it until he can guarantee at least one draw.
Yeah, I think HotMEOWTH here is even considering drawing an additional card with a Binding Heal on the 2/1.
Oh, wow.
And I like that overall. I think that, yes, saving it to generate random cards with Lyra is nice, but you're still not deep enough in the deck, and you're going to need to find Anduin sooner or later for you to close out this game faster. So the natural card draw is just a little bit more impactful here. And Cydonia here really looking to draw into maybe another piece of ramp, try and cheat out this UI the next turn. Now finds another Jade's Behemoth instead. Still very impactful on this board state.
At least he picked up something to do. He may very well miss this turn 9. He's got the Arcane Tyrant to play at the very least. But he hasn't had a significant missed turn as of yet. And that's very important because there's so much anti-aggro fuel in the deck for Jade Druid now that you can miss those development turns pretty easily.
Yeah, and one of the scarier things right now in Jade Druid is that they're always running double branching paths as well. So even though the board state here doesn't look like a lot, if Cydonia had a branching path in hand, you know, you're facing down 12 plus an additional 8 damage. So you're going all the way from 29 down to 20 with the UI following that up. That's a lot of damage coming out from Jade Druid. Such a favored matchup now for Jade Druid in that sense, where you can either armor or pressure out the Raza Priest, and Raza Priest really just has to draw perfectly to have any game against that kind of fast aggressive push from the Jade Druid here.
Branching paths has made a lot of difference. But still, I do think we've seen a really nice curve for Cydonia this far. This isn't how every game certainly goes anymore. You can be stranded with a hand that's just, you know, Ironwood Golems, Spreading Plagues, not a lot of gas, not a lot of pressure.
Yeah, I think that it has been one of the drawbacks of the recent list is they're maybe paying too much mind to other aggressive decks. Cutting out those Jade Spirits for Oaken Summons and things like that means that at this point, having a 4/4 Jade is pretty fortunate for Cydonia. Oftentimes you get to this turn 7 or 8, and your Jades are still 2/2s and 3/3s, and that gives the Raza Priest all the time in the world to draw towards their combo. You're not putting on enough pressure in a lot of cases.
This is actually a really awkward scenario for HotMEOWTH. If he chooses to Psychic Scream, he's just putting additional Jade generation in the deck, but he doesn't have any other methods of clear here. So instead, just going to take that sort of halfway point, get rid of 2 of the minions, start to heal up a little bit with the Priest of the Feast. And ultimately, he's going to be looking for Anduin. He's got the Velen and Mind Blast in hand, so with Shadow Reaper Anduin, before Cydonia has a chance to armor for significant amounts, HotMEOWTH can still easily clean this one up.
Yeah, I think HotMEOWTH wants to develop a little bit more onto the board here. Maybe even pick up just additional heal for the coin there while the Priest of the Feast is online. It's also pretty nice. Yeah, unfortunately for HotMEOWTH, he's not running the Gadgets and Auctioneer, so there's no kind of game plan with that. Instead, the Lyra with the Jade Idol is a little less impactful.
Do you have a preference either way?
Overall, because a lot of people are banning Priest, I think the Gadgets and Auctioneer becomes a little bit worse in the meta. And Lyra instead has just a more impactful body and can be a win condition if left alone on the board there.
Okay, so Cydonia is playing Jade Spirit, which means that this might be a list without Oaken Summons. Instead, a little bit Jade heavier.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of the original list here. I think Jade Spirit has done nothing wrong. Like, developing these
He's
bigger
just
Jades,
an enthusiastic little green guy.
Yeah, especially when you're leaving Priest up, it's just so important for you to have a higher Jade count.
Time waits for no one.
HotMEOWTH here having to decide whether or not to go for a clear. Maybe deciding that this will be the Lyra turn. Clearing up the forward means that he'll be outside of lethal range for sure. And he can go ahead and take this turn to use something like Shadow Visions to maybe find the Dragonfire Potion.
The Jades are still only sitting at 5/5. So the Dragonfire Potion is still a really potent clear. And a Mind Control is probably going to be a little bit too slow, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, if Cydonia's Jade development comes to more of a halt, then Mind Control can be a very impactful card. But I wouldn't see that card being very useful just yet.
Dragonfire isn't going to be a clean clear for much longer, but still used in culmination with, you know, a Spirit Lash if Cydonia is able to find it, or if HotMEOWTH is able to find it, excuse me. Still definitely the best option there.
Yeah, I think maybe the most impactful card he's gotten here is the Eternal Servitude. Actually deciding not to trade here. That's 13 damage with double branching pass. Putting on another 12 is just going to be lethal here for Cydonia. You have to respect that here, actually. Jade Druid having Savage Roar in the back pocket at all times is just so impactful. And you know Cydonia has also played the Ultimate Infestation, so There's a good chance it's coming out. 2 is a little ridiculous, but unfortunately for HotMEOWTH, Cydonia did happen to have both copies in hand here.
That is an unexpected amount of burst damage, but it is going to be enough. And HotMEOWTH maybe not giving enough respect to the amount of burst that is now available in Jade Druid. Cydonia going to scoop that one up and go to a 2-1 lead. In play, certainly. HotMEOWTH going to bring out his mage this time around. Cydonia with the priest as his final deck.
And this is probably one of the matchups that we've seen a lot less of throughout the tournament. It's the big spell mage going up against Rozaka's priest. And HotMEOWTH obviously has kind of a soft strategy to beat Rozaka's priest, leaving it up, choosing not to ban it, and instead hoping that the mage is going to be good enough in this matchup. I'm not quite sure myself how the percents really lay out here, but I'd have to imagine Raza Priest is a little bit favored.
Just seems like the priest has enough early and mid game to be able to put on a good amount of pressure, get in some chip damage, and then the combo is just so difficult to beat. In theory, HotMEOWTH should be able to do it with Arcane Artificer armor. We're seeing Dirty Rat in this list as well, which could potentially pull Raza. Would just be game winning for the mage.
Yeah, and HotMEOWTH, very aware of how this matchup pans out, decides to keep Frostlich Bana off of the mulligan here.
You definitely don't want to be the mage stranded in the late game with just a bunch of inefficient removal in your hand because the Raza Priest isn't playing all of those minions. Nah, you want to hit that Jaina power turn, start cranking out some of your own water elementals onto the board, and be able to counter pressure a little bit. It's difficult for this deck to put on any pressure, period.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Rozaka's priest is under the constant threat of those wellies being able to heal up the mage again, which means they have to deal with the 3/6 body, which isn't very easy overall.
Definitely is not. But Cydonia's build in particular, being the dragon Rozaka's priest, I think just gives him even more of an advantage because you do have considerably better mid and late game than just a traditional Rozaka's priest.
I think it's actually maybe the opposite. Pulling
so?
out that Alex is pretty big here too, though. I think overall the idea is the priest is so favored against the mage because it has all this card draw. It finds its combo
You're just getting
pieces.
through to your combo so fast.
Yeah, when you're not drawing cards and you're just playing minions, you're kind of playing into the mage's hand a little bit. The mage is always high up on removal abilities, and it also has the ability to generate some armor. So if you give it the time to play out those
That's a good point.
artificers, you know, you're maybe closing your own window to beating up the priest instead.
I didn't think about it that way.
Yeah, and Cydonia here, he has the option to play maybe Visions to get a Shadow Word Pain, to start pushing the Alex Straza damage. Instead, just going to go for the Kazakas on curve here.
Get a solid 5-mana potion. Because the Alex Straza was pulled so early, now Cydonia can put on a good amount of pressure, which his deck is better at doing, but HotMEOWTH's build is so efficient at dealing with that pressure via all of these big spells.
Yeah, and HotMEOWTH with a Dragon's Fury is in hand at this point. He might be able to clear this board up just this turn. That would be very nice pull from this Dragon's Fury.
Yeah, with that Acolyte of Pain, I would expect we're not seeing Arcane Intellect in this build like we did earlier today from another contestant. So HotMEOWTH likely going for very consistent Dragon's Furies over additional cycle.
Yeah, and we can see in Cydonia's hand his Kazaka's Potion isn't playable at this point because it doesn't meet the polymorph requirement.
Oh, you're right.
Which can be kind of an annoying thing because the big spell mage doesn't actually play a lot of minions on its own, and then the polymorph potion could be sitting dead in hand for a little while for Cydonia here.
What is in Henry's room?
Oh, Dirty Rat number 2.
Don't know how effective that necessarily would be for Cydonia, but for HotMEOWTH, it's pretty heads-up inclusion.
Yeah, I think overall HotMEOWTH's build signals a few things. The Acolyte of Pain means that there, like you said, probably isn't Arcane Intellect, and the Medivh and the Frosted Jaina means that he's probably running a greedier list. He doesn't need as much card draw because he's hitting those threats just a little more consistently throughout his turns.
And then because of that, it's going to have a much stronger late game than a control mage that may be running ice barriers, for instance, like we saw earlier today. It's going to hit those power spikes much later on, but if you can stabilize through that early game, then you're going to be that much better in the late game.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we take the Polymorph push in here as well on Cydonia's side. Just denying some card draw for the mage means that you don't have to deal with a constant stream of threats. Maybe he doesn't carve into things like Medivh and Dragon Caller Alana, Alexstrasza, things like that overall now.
Firelands Portal lines up very nicely here. You get to drop that Arcane Tyrant alongside it.
Yeah, the Arcane Tyrants are an interesting inclusion as well on HotMEOWTH's list. How do you feel about the Tyrants here?
I like the Tyrants in this build because this deck in general just has so little pressure that free 4/4s alongside any of your removal spells could be a big swing turn. So normally you're playing Meteor, you're clearing up your opponent's board, but you have nothing to counter pressure with. There's Arcane Tyrant. It's not the biggest body, but it's a good one.
I think it's a really good tech choice, especially because HotMEOWTH is leaving Priest up. And everybody knows that Priest has kind of a hard time dealing with the free 4/4s as well.
It's no Azure Drake, but we'll take it.
Yeah.
And here it is presenting a bit of an awkward situation for Cydonia. That was HotMEOWTH's really first counter development onto the board. And Cydonia is still able to deal with these minions relatively easily. Starting to rack up some meaningful damage.
Yeah, double Artificer in hand means that when HotMEOWTH feels like he's being pressured a little bit too much, can double down on that armor gain, gain probably at least 12 with those Artificers, which is pretty nice here. Overall, I think he still wants to go for maybe the Medivh development.
Well, 9 on board from Cydonia. Yeah, you're never really actually... Okay, well, actually... Okay, 9 on board. Velen Coin Mind Blast would be lethal if Cydonia had them in hand.
And it does play a little bit into Primordial Drake, but I'm liking the play overall from HotMEOWTH because it relieves the most pressure, allows him to set up Frostless Jaina on turn 9, and you definitely want to get that card online as fast as possible in this matchup.
Yeah, absolutely. You've already gotten 12 mana or 12 armor from 2 1-mana cards. I think that's good. You're okay with that.
Back up to 30 at this point, and you're threatening to gain even more life with the water elementals that Jaina will generate for you as well.
As long as you can stay out of range of a single turn Prophet Velen OTK, then if you have the water elementals on the board, remove the Prophet Velen, you heal back up to a relatively safe range, you should be able to stabilize from there. But that's a big hypothetical.
Yeah, and Cydonia actually has been kind of pressured, had to deal with its board state for a little bit. The Blood Mage Thanos and Acolyte still in hand, still a lot of card draw available to him that he just hasn't had a lot of time to fit into his curve thus far.
Yeah, he's had to play a little bit too reactively for him to advance his own game plan.
Yeah, is there also potential that Cydonia doesn't want to draw that many cards, take the Mage to Fatigue instead?
That's a possibility.
Cydonia could have played Blood Mage Thanos with his 2 remaining mana. Instead, decided to hold onto it here. Kind of an interesting line. Maybe Cydonia has already decided that he wants to take this game late and doesn't want to hit that much card draw yet.
As long as he's able to deal with the minion pressure from HotMEOWTH, then Cydonia knows that there's no real threats to his life total. So maybe he feels like he does have that ability to take this one late. I don't know. I think we'll find out this turn because he doesn't have many other options than finally getting down some cycle.
Yeah, at this point, it is time to draw some cards for Cydonia. And I've always thought that finding Raza Anduin, it doesn't really matter how much of a late game plan you have anymore. Just kind of wipe that out of the water here. Raza Anduin too strong even for the likes of Frostless Jaina, although it was a very fast pull. turn 9 coming
It
down
was.
is a huge impact.
And
I
we've
definitely-
still got a potentially very threatening board to be developed off of that Atiash for HotMEOWTH.
I mean, it
That-
definitely makes the turns for Cydonia a little bit harder too. He has to be very mindful of, when he's able to develop his minions because of the ability of Frosted-Jaina to generate even more water elementals. Like, especially in this case, yeah, he's drawing with the Acolyte, but he's also created a 1/1 Acolyte that he has to heal up at this point, and then try to make sure his board is just not weak to the ping effect at all.
So HotMEOWTH is running out of resources in hand that inherently pressure, but because of Atiash Blizzard this turn and a hero power, can develop a 6 mana, now a 4 for Arcane Tyrant for free, and with that ping, you can go ahead and grab a water elemental on the board as well. So this is a very powerful turn if HotMEOWTH wants to commit to it.
Yeah, and the Radiant Elemental pull, always very welcome, means that there's going to be less combo potential once Prophet Velen is drawn. Now, is there a chance that HotMEOWTH is not running Ice Block in his list?
I would think so, actually. We haven't
maybe-
seen any cheap spells in the deck that would water down that Dragon's Fury. We haven't seen Arcanologist.
Yeah, and that becomes much more of a threat here because Cydonia maybe has picked up on that. He's held coin this entire game, kind of waiting for that to be converted into 4 extra damage with Velen, and the potential for that to just combo into more spell damage as well. It's pretty impactful.
Yeah, earlier today when we did see this big spell mage with Ice Block in it, we saw Medivh's Valet, we saw Arcanologist. HotMEOWTH's list, seems to be much greedier, much more late game oriented. Same concept, very different execution.
Yeah, but the lack of Ice Block, that's still got to be so favored for the Priest, right? Because you just don't have that extra turn.
Yes.
You got to play around massive amounts of damage every time, especially if Raza and Anduin are drawn early in this matchup.
Yeah, I would think that only makes this a better scenario for Cydonia. And we've seen HotMEOWTH throughout this entire game. He's had a solid curve. He had the removal when he needed it. He's had good pressure, and he had Frostlich Jaina on turn 9, and still Cydonia sitting at 30 life, and he's just really one Shadow Reaper Anduin away from potentially closing out this game over the matter of a couple turns.
And it looks like for Cydonia, this turn might just be a hard pass.
Wow.
And Skulking Geist, a very welcome top deck as well. It's something that I would play after trading. You would want to kill the Acolyte and then maybe burn an additional card out of the hand here.
That's a good point.
So I like to make some trades before playing Geist here.
Maybe a little bit of a missed opportunity there for HotMEOWTH if he is going to clear off that Acolyte of Pain.
Now HotMEOWTH or Cydonia is just going to be drawing impactful card after impactful card. But overall, the deck should have a little less burn damage to fit in those dragon options anyway. So there's actually a chance that Cydonia's deck doesn't have a lot of burn damage, just to make room for the additional dragons that he's playing.
I think there's a chance he's not running Mind Blast.
Oh, I mean, that would be nice, but the Mind Blast being in the hand, unfortunately, means that Cydonia
means
does
he's
have
probably
some extra
running
burn
Mind
damage.
Blast. Good point.
Yeah, I mean, here we are. Cydonia does have
Hey,
Psychic
Malygos
Scream
Mind
to deal
Blast.
with
There
this,
you go.
yeah. That's what he's been saving coin for this whole time, too, right? It's
The lines are becoming so clear to me.
extra burn potential.
Are we
here.
running Mind Blast? Yes, it's in our hand. Do we have Malygos? Yes, we just discovered it.
Psychic Scream coming down. Guy's starting to get rid of the spells. Again, would just be an extra deck draw for him. But HotMEOWTH here, slowly running out of steam. Been holding on to this Arcane Tyrant for quite a long time now, just as refuel. Again, not going to do a whole lot, just being a 4/4 on the board here.
Ugh. No
There's-
impactful development for HotMEOWTH.
if there's any silver lining here, it's that Cydonia hasn't really found his remaining combo pieces yet. And that's kind of the struggling points for one of the dragon variants of the deck, is that they just don't have as much card draw as some of the regular variants of Rozaka's Priest.
Yeah, but how does HotMEOWTH really win this from here? I suppose just leverage the hero power as much as you possibly can, try to build up a board that Cydonia can't remove.
I mean, we're looking at a situation where HotMEOWTH needs Sidonia's bottom card or maybe bottom 2-3 cards to be Anduin. You know, a few more turns of life gain with Water Elementals would be enough to put HotMEOWTH at something like 35 plus health total.
Yeah.
At that point, it's a little bit harder to deal with.
He's got the Polymorph this turn, plus the hero power that summons a Water Elemental. The Arcane Tyrant is an elemental as well. And now we've got Meatwagon.
And that's actually a really interesting card, because normally Meatwagon doesn't do a whole lot of matchups, but if HotMEOWTH is running a Doomsayer in his list, it could potentially be pulling out Doomsayer and clearing his own board in this kind of instance.
That's a good point. Since he's not running Arcanologists or Secrets and Medivh's Valet in the early game, maybe Doomsayer is his anti-aggro card of choice.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like HotMEOWTH can't just solely be relying on Dragon Sphere, right? There's a good chance that his build does have Doomsayer in there. And we'll find out soon enough here.
Meatwagon, have you forsaken us? And Cydonia, probably not super happy to see that Emerald Drake off of Ysera. It's not the worst option, but a Ysera Awakens for sure would have been favorable.
Yeah, Emerald Drake, not bad though. A lot of pressure for 4 mana here.
Yeah.
Actually even activates the Dustbreaker for him.
That's true. So you can just Dustbreaker and Dragonfire in the same turn.
Doomsayer being pulled out. That's actually a pretty good sign for HotMEOWTH as well. Just another kind of a dead draw taken out of the deck is pretty nice.
Dragon Caller Alana.
Yeah, that is kind of going to be...
That's massive.
Yeah, that is all he needs. I mean, he's saving it for post-Anduin. Cydonia will likely have to play Anduin once he draws it at some point as well, and then Dragon Caller Alana can be the way for HotMEOWTH to kind of seal off this game here. You kind of know that Cydonia doesn't have it in hand, though, yet. I would have been maybe more happy just playing it that turn and hoping that it wasn't a top deck situation.
Yeah, you could just win the game in one turn. You've seen Psychic Scream already. You just saw Dragonfire Potion. Maybe there's Ysera Awakens in hand, but it's, what, a 1 in 5, so maybe not worth playing around.
Yeah, HotMEOWTH playing it super safe here. Probably waiting for Anduin to come out and then slamming the Dragon Caller instead.
I mean, we see that HotMEOWTH has many more cards in his deck than Cydonia does. So Cydonia is going to be pressured to end this game fast, whereas HotMEOWTH has the liberty of time. He can wait a little while, he can leverage his own hero power, he's got the life gain, and now he's got the big bomb.
I don't even think that HotMEOWTH's deck quality has gone down too much because of the Psychic Scream. There's just more Water Elementals in there, cards that he's very happy just to top deck and play off the top. Cydonia getting rid of the damage here, maybe being a little more mindful of something like Alexstrasza as well, not wanting to take too much chip damage and getting burned out the following turn.
That's a good point. Suddenly you go from 24 to 8.
And HotMEOWTH pulling out Acolyte Pain for Cydonia means that that's just some free card draw coming to Sidonia's way here.
Holy control mirrors, Batman.
And HotMEOWTH here is actually free to develop as many Water Elementals as he would like. The Psychic Scream is gone, Dragonfire is gone, and Water Element being just a 3/6 actually escapes Anduin as well, so no harm done here going for the Water Elementals this early.
Very few cards remaining in the deck for Cydonia. Shadow Reaper Anduin being one of them. But if we're playing a game of Anduin Chicken here, I think HotMEOWTH's going to come out on top.
Yeah, but maybe HotMEOWTH is waiting a little bit too long here, because when Cydonia does find that Anduin, it's going to be Prophet Velen, Coin, Mind Blast, and he can even fit into Shadow Visions and a Silence. That's going to mean at least 32 damage coming out from Cydonia here.
So maybe HotMEOWTH should be... Well, he's absolutely got to read that Cydonia does not have Anduin. So maybe if you just slam Alana, Cydonia whiffs for one more turn, then you just win the game.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good read so far. I feel like Cydonia would have played it as soon as possible.
Yes.
It's not going to hit a whole lot initially, but you're able to use that hero power to clear up some of these water elementals and just get to a stabilizing point. There's no way that Cydonia's been holding onto it for this long.
Oh, no way. I do wonder if maybe these guys have knowledge of each other's decks. If Cydonia knows the Dragon Caller Alana is in this build, then maybe he would keep Shadow Reaper Anduin in his hand. HotMEOWTH
really
doesn't know for
the
sure.
long game then.
Yeah, it's a possibility. I mean, obviously we can see that's not the case, but HotMEOWTH may be thinking that.
Yeah, but in the meantime, HotMEOWTH has managed to develop a board that has become quite resilient to even just Shadow Reaper Anduin at this point.
Back up to 37 health, which is out of range
Is that
of Velen OTK. Is
Anduin as the very last card of the deck?
Yep. That's a bit unlucky. Maybe Lyra can get us there.
Well, you don't want to draw any more from that Acolyte.
We can silence our Acolyte, but no, we want to save silence for our Velen combo. Shadow Visions will get us nothing because our last card is Anduin.
Yeah, Cydonia kind of realizing that even if he has Raza Anduin online, it being the last card is not going to be quite enough to close out this game. Has to kind of look for a Lyra miracle going on here to maybe bring it back.
Doomsayer. No.
Well, the Servitude's actually not a bad pull. Gives him an opportunity to play Lyra again in the following turns.
It
Going
does.
again for something like Pint-Sized Horror on the following turn to maybe clear up the board. But even then, HotMEOWTH has beyond been at the point of stabilization here. Looks like he's going to close out this game. Anduin being the bottom card is just pretty unfortunate for Cydonia here. Skulking Geist again. You can't have that pint-sized potion.
Yeah, this was a bit of an unusual game.
I mean, we alluded to it a little bit earlier. You know, if the priest draws poorly and the mage draws well, the game turns to pan out for HotMEOWTH's favor here.
And then with the addition of that Dragon Caller Alana, if Shadow Reaper Anduin is the last card in your deck, then the mage certainly has a good amount of game against this. And this also is calling all the way back to that mulligan where HotMEOWTH kept Frostlich Jaina to ensure that he was able to play it on turn 9. That had a big impact this game.
Yeah, and I think Cydonia is about ready to scoop out of this game. Even if he peels off all the armor from HotMEOWTH, he'll be going back to 30 every turn with these water elementals. And Cydonia in hand just doesn't have the ability to kill him over the top with 30 in one turn anymore.
No, doesn't have a Holy Smite, doesn't have a 0-mana spell. The best he could do would be Velen, Mind Blast, Pint-Sized Potion in one turn, and you're not touching 30.
Yeah, the light really has betrayed Cydonia today, huh? This game, Anduin being bottom, was quite unfortunate in a matchup that overall seemed pretty favored. HotMEOWTH doesn't even have something like Ice Block in the deck, so it seems like the OTK damage would have been very effective, but Cydonia, unable to find Anduin, was just not able to close this game out fast enough. HotMEOWTH didn't even need to really play the Dragon Caller Alana to win this one.
Nah, too many turns of just doing nothing. All that HotMEOWTH needed was an army of water elementals to get the job done. And this was an unfortunate one for Cydonia, but he is going to have another chance with the Priest, as HotMEOWTH is going to tie up this series 2-2. We're going to game 5, and I wouldn't expect it to be any other way.
Yeah, and HotMEOWTH putting out Skulking Geist number 2, just a little bit of added insurance. The game has been a very decisive victory here for HotMEOWTH.
I think we're going to be seeing a Priest mirror for game number 5. But they are
down to that?
It has, saying. If you haven't seen enough of them in your life, here's one more, but at least the lists are slightly different. You've got the dragon-oriented priest for Cydonia, the cycle-heavy priest for HotMEOWTH.
I think overall that means that HotMEOWTH is going into this Game 5 slightly favored as well.
Whoever finds the combo first generally wins. So if Cydonia, if this were the priest mirror and Anduin were the less card in his deck, then similarly to this game, he would have lost. So let's dragon damage and just Anduin for lethal, but that is not what the deck is intended to do. So maybe Cydonia's deck is better at accomplishing Plan B, but you want to go into it hoping you can accomplish Plan A.
Again, Cydonia taking a little bit of time with the mulligan phase here. Understanding that Dustbreaker probably doesn't do a whole lot in the early game. I'd like to see him kind of full pitch his hand outside of maybe Curious Glimmerroot.
That's the consideration I would make. Just because Glimmerroot does have the chance of pulling Raza or Anduin from your opponent.
HotMEOWTH really deliberating here whether or not to play Pyro or to play the Novice Engineer. Maybe being a little bit mindful of something like Coin Acolyte of Pain. Doesn't want to play Novice into that kind of board state. Yeah, actually decides to play the Wild Pyromancer instead of taking the initial card draw, deciding that Novice draws instantly and we can kind of get that online whenever. And on top of that, there is a chance that Kazakis does a resummon potion, which means you definitely don't want Novice Engineer in that card pool.
That's a good point. I think if Cydonia had had Northshire Cleric, it likely would have come down on turn 1. So that's probably not the consideration that HotMEOWTH was making. Pyro combos in this matchup, yeah, you can go ahead and get greedy, save it for Northshire Cleric with Circle, save it for your Acolyte of Pain, but that's going to take a lot of time, and maybe you don't have that much time.
Yeah, for HotMEOWTH, kind of a difficult turn, deciding whether or not to play around Potion of Madness here, whether or not to just fill out the curve with Acolyte of Pain. I think you have time to hold back resources, knowing that you are the more proactive list in the mirror match. Yeah, this is kind of a good bait as well. HotMEOWTH is saying if you have Potion Madness in the hand, you're more than likely to steal Novice Engineer and use it on Wild Pyromancer. And that does two very good things for HotMEOWTH. One, it reduces the board state, and it reduces the Novice Engineer from his own res pool for Kazaki's Potion.
Yeah, it also means that the Potion of Madness is out of the way for Acolyte of Pain. In a lot of the Rizaka's Priest mirrors, I've found it can be very risky to play down your Blood Mage Thalnos or play down your Acolyte of Pain without getting immediate value from them, because then your opponent just has the ability to Potion of Madness, steal that draw from you, and then you've lost your draw and you've given them a draw as well. You're essentially -2.
Yeah, one of the things to be mindful of the mirror is just when the card draws aren't immediate, you do have to work a little bit harder to make sure those card draws take effect here. So for HotMEOWTH, that means holding on to Acolyte for an extra turn and then going for something like Binding Heal and trading off the board so it's harder for them to Potion Madness, and you've already received the immediate draw to play around something like Silence as well.
But going with that Wild Pyromancer instead of the Novice Engineer on turn 2 is paying off for HotMEOWTH here on turn 4. He's able to ensure at least one draw off of this Acolyte of Pain, potentially 2.
Yeah, the intricacies of Raza Priest Mirror. Don't you just kind of wish they just banned this deck?
Oh yeah, always.
Yeah, I guess the prevailing strategy for both players has been that we're going to give Raza Priest the go-ahead to be played, because we have some amount of strategy against the deck overall.
Yeah, just ban the Control Warlock. You don't want to have to deal with that. Instead, go with Raza Priest. I've played a lot of Raza Priest in my time. It's a stupid good deck. It ladders so fast. It's got game against pretty much everything. But in the same vein, when you play a deck nonstop, and you cast a deck nonstop, and you see a deck nonstop, you're really excited at the prospect of that deck rotating to Wild.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think HotMEOWTH here, the Raza, a very welcome top deck here. The big question is whether or when can HotMEOWTH really get the Kazakus online as well. It's a card that has kind of been neglected in his curve right now, and it means that he's going to have to take a time off to really try and find a potion that draws there. It's actually something that I've seen Muzzy do recently in the Rat Race, is in the Rosakus Priest Mirror, he mulligans away the Kazakus.
Okay.
The reasoning for that was, overall, it just doesn't do a whole lot. If you whiff on the card draw, the card overall is kind of weak.
That's a good point. It's definitely the... So I guess of the 4 cards being Prophet Velen, Raza, Shadow Reaper, Anduin, and Kazakus, Kazakus is the one you want the least. Granted, you'd still rather have it in a lot of matchups over many of the cards in your deck, but you want to prioritize the other 3, I'd say 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, absolutely.
And for HotMEOWTH, maybe that means that Kazakus will be saved until it is able to perform a very specific function. Maybe he'll end up with a 1-mana potion off of it after he plays Shadow Reaper Anduin and has access to Prophet Velen. Or he could just play it right now. 5-mana potions are going to be probably your safest bet at any point in time. It's the highest value for the mana cost.
Yeah, HotMEOWTH hasn't quite assembled the combo pieces that he needs just yet to choose a 1-mana potion for Velen. Instead, he's actually going to go for it here now. Maybe it's something that he plans on playing this turn.
Cydonia with a strict board building potion, likely because he didn't have any better options. Not bad, but he certainly would have been getting closer to his Raza at this point in time. But we are looking at 1 combo piece for each of these guys. HotMEOWTH's got his Raza online, Cydonia has Anduin in hand. And the Velen as well.
Yeah, I think Cydonia is going to make another push onto the board here. Something like Twilight Drake, Coin, Shadow, or Death. Solidifying this board state and relying on his minions to do a little bit of chip damage in the mirror match here. Actually, potentially saving coin for the Lyra instead. And
It's possible.
the Raza actually not being that much of a threat to Cydonia, because even though it is on the board, Shadow Reaper Android can be coined on next turn to deal with it as well.
HotMEOWTH's just thrown a second Raza into Cydonia's deck.
Well, it actually doesn't have much of an impact, right? Because as soon as you draw 1 copy of the Raza, the other one will be online.
No, that's what I'm saying. He now has, there's 2 Razas in Cydonia's deck for him to pick up one of them.
Oh, yeah. So you're actually doubling Cydonia's chances of drawing the second combo piece. That actually can become quite impactful in this matchup. And HotMEOWTH says, you don't have Raza quite yet. I'll just give you another one. Give you an opportunity at the combo here.
Unfortunately, there was no way for HotMEOWTH to kill off that Raza, and there was a lot of pressure on board, so maybe he did what he had to do. But throwing a Kazakus back into the deck, putting a second Raza into the deck, it's really bad.
Yeah, and I like the smite pick from Cydonia as well here. Just going for the more aggressive options, knowing that he has a higher chance of drawing towards that combo now.
Even if you do just have to Prophet Velen, Mind Blast, Double Smite or something at some point, you've got the coin, you can do that now. And HotMEOWTH going to take this opportunity to go off a little bit with Lyra, and there's Shadow Reaper Anduin. So it does look like HotMEOWTH is going to have the combo online first. That's a big deal. He doesn't have the Velen yet, but a couple turns of damage, even without Velen, can just be enough to win him the game. Cydonia is going to have to race to catch up here. But without Raza, he just can't do it.
Yeah, and Cydonia here not a very clean way to deal with the Raza. Dragonfire will do the trick, but it will actually take up your whole turn here, so it's not looking too great for Cydonia. Perhaps you can go Dragonfire, Northshark, coin a heal, just to squeeze out some extra card draw this turn. Doesn't look terrible.
The coin is not more valuable than the next card in your deck.
What is in harm's way?
Looks like it's what he's going to go ahead and do. 2 Razas in deck for Cydonia. Can he find one of them?
Wow, Alex Strauss is actually pretty impactful in this matchup too. Cydonia might just be a Mind Blast away as well with Velen and Smite in hand.
So HotMEOWTH commits this entire turn to Anduin. So Cydonia can... Alex Straza deal 5. HotMEOWTH goes to 15.
You know, that's actually a lot of duplicates in HotMEOWTH's hand. 2 Spirit Lashes gives him a lot of sustain. Double Smite for a little bit of extra burn damage.
How much damage does he just have? He's just got a lot of cheap cards, period. So he can play at most 3, 4, 5, 6 cards in hand in one turn. That's 12 damage from Hero Powers plus 6 damage from Holy Smites.
Yeah, it's looking like it'll add up to something like 20 or so.
Yeah.
Without the Velen pickup, but it's still basically Velen Mind Blast at this point.
I believe 2 damage off lethal for HotMEOWTH.
Yeah, it should add up to 20 here. 6 cards in hand plus the additional ping, each smite dealing 3.
Yeah.
Definitely important to gain some life here, some additional time, and clear up the Alex while you're doing all that.
Very big turn for Cydonia. If he can find Raza, maybe he can stay in this, but HotMEOWTH has the combo online so much earlier.
Yeah, and Northshark Cleric, while not the best pull from Glimmerroot, will just be an extra ping. 1 mana cards always welcome here.
1 mana, deal 2 damage, we'll take it. Very nice pickup for HotMEOWTH. It's going to be a full clear.
Still no Ross in sight. Overall, this should just be a turn for Cydonia to go ahead and heal up and play his Anduin, gain as much life as possible, and just kind of try and set it for that Raza top deck to be more impactful throughout the next few turns.
If he Anduin's this turn, picks up Raza next turn, he can win the game in 2 turns.
Yeah, absolutely. He's not out of it yet. The Velen, obviously a lot of burst damage still left for Cydonia here.
A lot of decision making this turn.
Yeah, if he was contemplating whether or not to play Lyra, it's getting to be a little bit too late now.
Yes. I think the hand is a little bit too full as well.
Yeah, instead going to go with the Anduin here. Deciding getting online now is better than ever.
Not going to hit anything with the battle cry anyway. Either way, HotMEOWTH is 1 Velen away from winning the game.
Yeah, and HotMEOWTH here takes the time to get some of the more expensive cards out of the hand, still holding on to plenty of burst damage with the 2 smites. Overall, it seems like HotMEOWTH has about 60 damage in burn at this point.
The Violet Worm actually a really good card.
It is good in a lot of circumstances, but it actually kind of plays against Cydonia here in terms of the Spirit Lash gaining
Yeah.
Cydonia just some additional life as well.
There's the big man.
That is looking like it's going to be gained for Cydonia actually here. Like Raza, Death the Worm, and then you've got all the life gain on top of everything else. That's a huge strength for Cydonia.
Well, he goes up to 30. If HotMEOWTH picks up Velen off the top, does he have a lethal present? It's the Double Smite, Spirit Lash, Shadow Word Pain, Northshire Cleric, and the Death active, I suppose? Yeah. So the right 6 cards of the hand are all playable, but with the Velen, it would just be the Double Smites and the Cleric.
Yeah, this game panning out to be a lot closer than we thought in the beginning.
Yeah.
HotMEOWTH still also looking for Velen of his own.
Doesn't have it.
HotMEOWTH knows that he does have 24 damage with the Velen pickup, so it's maybe important to actually hold on to the Northshire Cleric there to deal double damage with the Velen. Instead, he's going to go on board with the Talon Precincts and probably set up a Shadow or Death here as well.
So Cydonia has 14 damage with the Velen, Holy Smite, and the Hero Powers. This one is close.
Yeah, I would like to see HotMEOWTH hold on to that Northshire Cleric there.
Yeah.
Being at 21 and being at 22 is the same in terms of math, where the Velen damage lands up here.
Everything's in increments of 2 anyway.
Yeah, and it would have been an extra 4 burst damage for HotMEOWTH if he had held on to it.
Yeah, if HotMEOWTH doesn't pick up something else to play with Velen, then he should have held on to the Northshire Cleric. Cydonia forced to clear the board. Putting on a little bit of pressure of his own.
The shadows grow short.
Yeah, and here I think Cydonia or HotMEOWTH is going to try and push as much damage as he can, utilizing the Dragonfire and the Shadow Pain to kind of get rid of some of the clunkier cards in his hand. Still setting up a lot of damage with the 2 Holy Smites. Just kind of still hoping for that Velen top deck here.
And Cydonia needs that Mind Blast. So, who can get it first? Nope, that's not playable.
Maybe it's time to start drawing with that Acolyte. Cydonia needs just
It
a
might be.
little more damage here.
I think it's that or just Primordial Drake this turn. Maybe it's a body that HotMEOWTH can't remove.
Darkness.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen Raza Priest Mirrors kind of toe the line for this long
This
here.
is weird.
And most of the time it's just 20 damage, or once you fall below 20 health or so, you're just
Yeah.
kind of dead.
Usually
Cydonia
it's
again.
one player has the combo, blows out the other player. And sometimes neither player has it. It's very weird that they both have it and stay alive for this long.
Glimmer Root into Glimmer Root. That's building
Sure.
some board pressure.
The shadows grow short.
Shadow Word Death.
So any draw here should be one for HotMEOWTH, right? Unless
So,
this Acolyte picks
2,
up
4,
a
6,
Binding
8,
Heal.
10, 12. Yeah. Anything playable should be a win for HotMEOWTH here. Exactly
The only thing I could really see would have been Shadow or Death or something, but that was already in the hand for HotMEOWTH. So it looks like he'll be able to close out this game with double smite. No Vela needed here.
Very, very weird Raza Priest Mirror. But ultimately, it is going to be HotMEOWTH who is going to take this one. He did get his Raza and Anduin both active first. Generally, that is an indicator for the player that is going to win. This time, however, it could have gone decisively either way if Cydonia had had just a little bit more damage at any point in time after that Raza. He had the Velen available. He easily could have done it, but HotMEOWTH is going to be the first player who is definitively moving on to tomorrow in the winners final.